we'll get started. This is the Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership meeting, February 28th at 3 o'clock. I'm Kiki Miller, council member from Coeur d'Alene, and I'll be moderating and leading us through the agenda. I know we have quite a few folks who I had talked to that were going to pop in a little bit later. And I just wanted to make an announcement for all of you who are panelists and the attendees that if you have a question, I believe Sean Holmes will monitor the chat box for us and just unmute himself and kind of interrupt and let us know if you have a question about one of these items, either as a participant or a panelist. Feel free to type it into the chat box and Sean will redirect us and try to get that answered before we leave. So as far as announcements, I don't have anything major. We did just discuss that we had a meeting with some Idaho Housing and Finance Association folks this last week, and that's going to be a work group agenda item. So we will be sharing that with you in the next advisory group meeting. And then I will jump straight down to see if David has anything he can share with us. I know there's been a lot of activity since Kootenai County in December agreed to create an open space committee, and there was a lot of work that went into studying open space and getting information from the public on what they wanted to have happen regarding open space. And do you have anything new you can share with us about Wes Hansen and that committee and what's happening?
Sure, Kiki, I can do a quick update. I'm meeting weekly or bi-weekly with Blair Williams, the Art Spirit Director, Wes Hansen, the immediate past Planning Commission Chair and member for the county, and Parks and Waterways Director, Nick Snyder. The purpose of our meeting, we're really drilling down on two things. We're trying to put together a sub-area group committee that would focus on developing a strategy for going forward with this in the way of forming local recreation districts in various parts of the county that could then create their own ability to purchase open space. But we're also looking at trying to create our own 501c3 that would be a way that we could control on a local level fundraising, issuing information on what we're doing, writing and administering grants, all the usual things that 501c3s do. But really the intent there is to create a 501 nonprofit, that is really solely focused on the needs of open space for the county. So that's where we are right now. Again, we're meeting every week to 2 weeks. And the other sidebar of that is, I can't talk in specifics, but I can say generally, since the county has begun this effort, there have been 2 landowners step forward with large acreage properties that are both willing to work up some sort of arrangement where the county would ultimately become the owner of this land. In one case, it's over 200 acres, and another, it's over 400 acres. It's premature for me to talk about details. I'm really just not at liberty yet, but to me, it's really inspiring that in this short time, we've had local property owners come forward saying they have an interest in preserving their land.
That's excellent. We really appreciate that. I think that that's the power of getting that input back to the right folks and having them feel supported enough to be able to take some action that the community's wanted for many decades. So thank you, David. And we'll keep you on the agenda. So whenever you have an opportunity to share something, you can bring that forward to the whole group. I'm going to hang on here one quick second, Ed, just to let people know we've got some technical difficulties letting some people in. So I want to give us a couple of minutes to try to iron that out. And although this is recorded, we can, I don't want anyone to miss the questions. So give us a quick second here. I think we got another dozen people in, so we got that fixed. Thank you guys all for your patience.
As a note, I know that Carrie was trying to get in. She had noted that she was only on the webinar end of things, so I'm not sure if somebody's been able to let her in yet.
Okay.
So this is the working, or this is the panelist, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
They're both in here. The panelists are the ones who are viewing on the screen. While we try to work on getting Carrie in, and Ed, I think you had a question regarding our last agenda item, which was discussing some progress on the Open Space Committee.
Right, thank you. David, if you could say, and I know you can't really, you're limited, each of those, are they connected, that over 200 and over 400 acres, are they connected in any way?
No,
Are they spread out different?
different parts of the county.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Great. Okay, thank you for that, David. We'll look forward to more next time. Jeff, I think I saw you pop in. I am not sure what's been happening in schools. If you have any update for us, that'd be great.
Sure, I'd be happy to update. Yes, our subcommittee met a couple of weeks ago. And as you know, we are in the legislative session, and I think our hope was that we might hear some movement on the idea of considering impact fees for schools as a public entity. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to get a lot of traction this year. There is a Democratic representative that was willing to bring forward a bill on that, but was unable to get a paper reading, and I believe the deadline for that has passed. So I think we're going to see a second legislative session go by with very little movement or action on that. So a little disappointed on that front. And just backing up to give a little background history on that, 2 years ago, the Idaho School Boards Association drafted a resolution with overwhelming support that they would like that to be considered. And in last year's legislative session, there was no consideration given for it. And the ISBA this year has been doing some roadshows and giving some presentations on it. But again, the support for this just seems to be very lethargic, and the representatives seem to want to give very little credence to the idea behind that. So we're disappointed in that. We'll continue to push as we can, but it looks like maybe in this legislative session, we might not see anything. So it could be another year out, but who knows how this will play out as things move forward. The second thing that we discussed in our subcommittee is the idea of a school plant facility levy. That's a tool that we could use that will help us handle some development. And right now that has a 10-year term, and the voter threshold is a little bit lower than a supermajority bond. And if that could move to a 20-year threshold, where we're asking for a certain amount over 20 years versus 10 years, it would be a lower ask each year to voters. And so what we had decided is, as Lakeland School District, Coastal School District, and Coeur d'Alene School District, we would draft a resolution and ask our school boards to support that and take that to the summer legislative session that would move forward for next year as well. So we will be working on that in the next couple of months of getting that resolution drafted so that we can take that to our school boards and see what kind of support we get from them. So that's what we're working on from the support side for how can we help support the facilities of schools. And as far as housing, I think, we will just align with the work that is happening with this committee. While it's still an impact for us, and, we know we're major employers in this community, we appreciate the work. And I think that's really will help us in the long run, and we'll continue to align with that.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate you with that update and keeping that committee moving forward and keeping us informed. So the next on the agenda, Maggie and I have been very busy and going back and forth in a lot of different arenas, trying to corral this information and get it out to the working group as well as all of the advisory group folks in a way that is easy for them to disseminate to their respective groups. Has been quite a challenge because things change pretty much every week. But I'm going to let Maggie give us an update on the land acquisition subcommittee and a lot of different directions that that group is going.
Hi, everyone. We are moving forward, as Kiki mentioned, and today I want to talk to you really more about some general concepts with respect to the land acquisition components. Your input's welcomed, and I think if you want to throw some questions in the chat box, you're welcome to do that if we have time to address it. On the land acquisition side of things, we all know that that's one of the biggest cost constraints, right, in this process for us to find affordable housing. So really, we've got private land ownership, and then we've got what we think is going to be public-private partnerships for the land. So those break out into basically two categories, right? We've got private land ownership that's going to be driven by private landowners, as well as employers. We've talked to a number of employers who have land and want to pursue concepts and ideas with respect to how they can develop housing for their employees. We have a really good example of a private land ownership project just across the border in Bonner County. It's called Culver's Crossing. It's a PUD, and that landowner has put into place restrictions on her land, and she will make about the same money as she would if she sold outright to a developer, but instead she has partnered with a builder. And a couple of examples of the deed restrictions, this is not all inclusive, but for instance, in order to buy in Culver's Crossing, you have to have lived in Bonner County for 2 years. And you have to actually be actively working, a senior, or disabled. In addition to that, it has to be the primary residence. So that addresses a number of concerns that are legitimate in our community with people coming in from the outside, buying second homes, investment properties, rentals, etc., and not living here. So the goal that owner has set is that she really wants to preserve those homes for local workers. They are able to do homes up there now through cluster housing. I think that's kind of a broad term, but it's a mix range of duplexes, triplexes, single family detached. It's a variety of different housing types. And they are able to build those right now in the range of 220 up to about 350,000. And that absolutely meets really our worker housing incomes at many levels at about 60% AMI, area median income, which is going to be just under 40,000 a year in earnings, up to about, I'd say up to about 80,000 a year in earnings. So that's a really good example of private land ownership. Another example is partnering with private landowners. So for instance, Panhandle Affordable Housing Alliance, when we put together our application to IHFA to do a townhome development for extremely low, we went to that landowner and said, we can't make it pencil if we pay you market, but because PAHA is a nonprofit, would you be interested in selling the land to us at cost? And then you can take a donation for the difference between the cost and market. Our obligation was to provide an appraisal, and that was attractive to that landowner. And so that's how we were able to acquire the land. So that's a great example, I think, of some private public partnerships that can happen. And it doesn't have to necessarily be through Panhandle Affordable, but we can facilitate that. And other nonprofits can do that as well. Another example is just an outright donation or using public monies to buy land to put into a community land trust. A community land trust is a broad term. It can be defined in a number of different ways, but the essential component is that one of the biggest legitimate concerns is how do we ensure affordability and perpetuity, right? And so community land trusts can do that because the land is owned by a trust and then long-term leased to the homeowners who build homes on that property. In that lease, a variety of different parameters can be set, and one that's very common is tying the appreciation to inflation or some sort of measurement that allows the homeowner to enjoy some benefits of wealth accretion, but not in a windfall market like what we've had here. And so what happens is over time, because of the limited appreciation that's enjoyed by the owner, it keeps the unit in affordability. So those are just some really great examples that we wanted to share with you. We're pursuing all of these right now. They're great opportunities for us as a community. We see it happening right across the border. And honestly, if they can do it in Bonner County, we can do it in Kootenai County. We know that. So we have a lot of interest from people that we're talking with. We've talked with landowners. We've been talking, Kiki and I have been talking with developers. We've been talking with council people to talk about creative solutions. So I think we're very encouraged, right, with the interest. And now we just have some work to do on this. With respect to the community land trusts, we are talking to a couple of different experts in those, and we have right in our own backyard, James Casper, who has done this through Habitat. But we are working right now to see if we can't put together a workshop for this group at a later date. I'm guessing it will probably be in a couple of months to help us get more educated really on how to do the outreach as a community for more land trusts, because I think that affordability and perpetuity is really, really important for us to ensure the integrity, not only of the flavor of our current community, but really for generations to come. I mean, we all want our children to be able to come back here after they go off for however long that is. We want them to be able to come back and live here in Kootenai County with us. So I hope that, I don't know if we've got any questions, but I think I've taken up about as much time as I was allowed, so.
And I'll just thank you, Maggie, because that stuff is great, and it's conversation that we need to continue to keep in the community and keep that dialogue going, so that these words and the ideas and the concepts become more commonplace with all of us. I think one thing that's interesting, when we got through the community land trust discussions initially, people tend to jump to the visual that this is a large structure or one square plot of a geographical location, and that's what we're doing. That's not necessarily the case of how these land trusts can work. They can be larger areas. They have much flexibility. The whole goal is to be able to retain ownership in the land so that you can retain it for local workers. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a giant project or a giant complex, or even in one acreage. So that's important. Another thing I was going to touch on, following up with what Maggie had said, that we're working in the land acquisition area, was we had discussed a little bit about where does this funding come from? How does that work? We know that there is, as mentioned earlier, even though we were recording, some of you may not have heard it, I believe they're talking tomorrow on the state level about the American Recovery Plan Act, the ARPA dollars being funded into housing projects, which is a potential revenue source that could come into a trust fund to help with this community land trust formation and funding. Another thing that I've been exploring is a campaign that would create a voluntary contribution by anyone who was moving into this area or anyone who lived in this area, that could go into a foundation that's been around for about 16 years, that has the ability to earmark funds for land trust through that foundation into Kootenai County. So what we have been talking about is crossing the T's and dotting the I's. There's some legalities to do that, but the general concept would be that we would get our builder, realtor, and other industry professionals who deal with land transactions to be kind of the champions of a campaign throughout the community that says how important it is to preserve housing for our local workers. And a way they can do that is a tax-deductible contribution into this fund, this foundation, that then earmarks that money back into a local community land trust. So that's something that you'll be hearing more about as we explore how that works. And one of the other things I always want to remind us as we're having these discussions, none of this is cast in stone. We have been morphing for over 14 months now into the different directions that the community wants us to go. And we'll continue to do that, be as transparent as possible, and share all the information and to the best of our ability with where we're at with all of that as we move along. Were there any other questions about where we're at with the land trust conversation at this point? I'll be happy to share details on the campaign with the working group, and hopefully if we have anything solidified after that, get a press release or information back out to the entire advisory group. So the next up is a new item. We have a new volunteer who's leading a committee. Well, a voluntold person, but I really appreciate Carrie Thorson just stepping in to take care of this little piece. Obviously, as you all can tell, we have just a monumental amount of work that goes into housing and growth issues. So Carrie is coordinating with a representative from the Resident-Owned Communities Incorporated, and we had a presentation. And if Carrie, you just want to give us a little bit of an update about what you know so far and what the plans are in the future on how to educate our property owners what they can do to help us preserve local housing. Unmute, and as soon as you unmute, we'll be able to hear you. Uh-oh. That might have been a wrong button. Well, okay, so we'll see if Carrie pops back in, but in the meantime, I will tell you that what we're basically talking about here is a voluntary project with mobile home park owners, whereby they can contact this company called Rock Inc., Rock USA, and there's have an office out of Spokane. They've done programs throughout the Northwest, including in Idaho. And what this organization does is connect funding with the mobile home park owner so that they can turn the tenants of that mobile home park into an organized group that becomes the owner of that mobile home park. And Carrie, I am giving your report, so hopefully you pop back in.
She's back in.
Great. So anyway, that is what we heard. And as I said, it's a voluntary program that basically allows the mobile home park tenants to own the dirt. And Carrie, go ahead and share what you know about that. And I'm not sure where your meetings are and what the process is, other than I know that the goal was for us as a group to put forward that information, to encourage our city councils and jurisdictions to support that information, and then basically be the connector between this organization and the mobile home park owners.
Yes, you're exactly right.
Oh, are we done?
I don't know where I went. I have a meeting with Victoria from Rock this week for a little bit more. I want to be really comfortable with getting the message out there, being the point person for that. But it is, it's one of those things. There's so many huge, big issues, the land trusts and all of these things that we're working on. And this seems like a really small piece, but it is a segment of our communities with the mobile home manufactured home park. They can't just pack up and move. When the lot rent gets raised, beyond what they can possibly do. So this is a wonderful opportunity for a landowner that was thinking about, yes, I'm going to sell my business, my mobile home or manufactured park. And also what's really interesting, RV parks. An example here is the Coeur d'Alene RV Park in Post Falls. It's been here for, I don't know, probably 15 years or so. There are school buses picking up students at an RV park because that is now full of people who are living in their RVs because that's their housing option. So while that was meant to be a tourist, people coming through the area, it's kind of morphed into something else. So I'm really excited about this because it seems small, but this is huge. This is huge to people that their home ownership does not include the dirt. So thank you for letting me work on this because I am passionate about it.
Great. And I really appreciate it too. I just wanted to mention that part of this came to fruition because I had learned about this program along many years ago and had talked to some folks at the Oak Crest Mobile Park about it. Unfortunately, they didn't take any action, and that mobile home park was sold here recently. So it did leave a lot of folks with a real challenge ahead of them, and the fear of being displaced, and there isn't any other place for them to go in our community. So it's a great piece to do, and it's voluntary. And I think the way that we can all help is assure that we're spreading the accurate information to folks who live in mobile home parks and to those owners that we want to support them in being a hero and helping those folks have the opportunity to at least say, yes, we'd like to move on with that. So Carrie, I'm hoping that by our next work group meeting, you'll be able to give us a report and form that into another report back to this entire group so the community knows what else we're working on.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. So on the next thing on our agenda item, we're going to talk a little bit about the partnership website, the social media and press releases. And I just wanted to make sure that all of the participants who are involved today know that one of the things that we're doing is adding to that website. We put a summary up there. The housing assessment is there. Put a summary up there this last few weeks ago that responded to some of the questions that came out of the partnership and the regarding the housing assessment. And the University of Idaho team did answer those questions in a summary form, and we do have that posted up there. And we did do a call out for any other questions, but we've kind of wrapped all that up. There's a technical piece coming out that follows up that's resource and information's behind that study, and we will probably link that to the website as it's appropriate to do that. One of the things that we're going to talk about here in a few minutes when we try to get through the poll, if we got the poll figured out, we were having some technical difficulties there, but I'm seeing a head nod, so it looks like we're past that, is that we want to make sure that we have everyone involved with knowing what's going on in the community and the partnership. Here's where you come in, advisory group members, is we need you to answer these poll questions as well as be familiar with what's going on that website. We're going to start putting out new pages on that website that are basically going to be much more detailed in some of the toolkit items we've been talking about. That would include, for example, the mobile home ROC program Carrie's talking about. That's a toolkit item that is something that preserves and protects housing in Kootenai County. So that will have a separate summarized section. In-depth, detailed definition of community land trusts and the progress and how folks can get involved will also become another page there. Another piece to that are the different options in the how you could occupancy restrict a product, building product. So that website's really important to where we're going. And Taryn, I don't know if you have the ability to screen share. If not, I think we did a little bit on the website before, but we've added more to it since then. Wanted to let you know that as we had business card type documents printed up. So we are spreading those out through the community that direct everyone back to the website. And there's been just a little bit more information on that. I'm going to segue these two together because our presentation schedule basically goes to a PowerPoint. Go ahead, Taryn.
Okay, I have the website up now, and for those of you who haven't seen it, we have all of the agenda and meeting materials and meeting recordings on here. We have frequently asked questions that we are adding to on a regular basis as more questions come up. And we have a ton of resources. We have a blog on here with news and announcements and press releases we're sharing. We also have links to the Facebook and Instagram. And what really is going to help right now is if everybody who is involved can start sharing on their social media and inviting friends, because we really need to get word out there about these social media platforms and channels. We did have some good press coverage. We sent out a press release on the 18th, and we had the full press release was printed on the front of the Coeur d'Alene Press, and we also got some attention online. So it's been positive. It's growing.
Great. Okay, so we're going to do a poll question now. So our host and panelists aren't voting, but any of our advisory group members, this is what we'd like to know from you. If you can answer these two questions, this is going to help us as we wrap up today, give us some more direction on the work that the work group needs to do. So if you can go ahead, any of you participants, answer those two questions now. Hillary, is that the direction we're going?
Yes. So yeah, panelists won't have access, but the attendees would like everyone to respond to both of these questions. Please.
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm trying to answer that. Am I a panelist or an attendee?
For this meeting, you're a panelist because you were on the agenda, but next time
Okay.
you will be, yeah.
If it gives you the option, you feel free to take it, but I think it limits it to the attendees
Okay.
only. So We
Thank you.
have 68% of the attendees have taken it. So if anyone else wants to respond on the first one, looks like a few more responses are coming in. So majority
Ready.
said yes, they have the ability to share the website. And it looks like kind of a mix of organization sizes, but some great representation from smaller and larger organizations where we would get a little bit more exposure. So
Great.
thank you.
All right. So Taryn, thanks for sharing that. And now we've got some good feedback on where we're at within this group on that social media. I wanted to go real quickly into the next item, which is what we're doing. And this is important for the reach that we have so that you all know where we're getting our information from and how widespread our message needs to be. So regarding we're kind of on a campaign, a roadshow here to gather information to make sure the community is educated on the items that we have before us. This is going to be very important, I think, when we start talking about things like levies and bonds and community land trusts and what it is. And we have the great opportunity to be able to share the information and the potential solutions that we've all been putting forward. So to date, as we let you all know, we created a PowerPoint presentation. It's about 15 minutes long with a Q&A at the end. And we are trying to get in front of as many organizations as we can. To date, we've gotten the Ignite CDA board has seen this presentation, the Chamber Joint Government Group, the Coeur d'Alene Press, the Coeur d'Alene Mayor and 2 of the council members, and the Sunrise Rotary Club, as well as there's one other that I didn't write down. What we have is coming up in March is the NIBCA General Membership Meeting, Coeur d'Alene 2030. We have Rotary Thursday evening, CD Aid, we'll see this, the Coeur d'Alene Chamber Executive Roundtable, the Developers Council at NIBCA, NAACP, and the Coeur d'Alene Association of Realtors hasn't committed on a date yet. So we have Ginny Gilliam with the EDC and Maggie Lyons with PAHA and myself are coordinating with the Post Falls City Council and their zoning commissioners so that we can do one presentation to them upcoming. So we're going through staff to get that one done. We have David is coordinating with the Kootenai County Board of Commissioners so that we'll be able to do one presentation with them. Ginny is working with Kootenai Health to have a presentation there. And we're also doing the Coeur d'Alene City Council and Planning and Zoning within the next couple months. We have another 8 groups that we have contacted to have a presentation there. And what I wanted to do today is do another ask to anyone in the advisory group membership here who has an organization that wants to see that. Did we do that in the form of a poll, Hillary?
Yes, let me get that poll going.
As many of these meetings are recorded, when they are, we had talked to a number of people and we'll send them a link of a clip of the recording of the PowerPoint. We'll also, when we get a few of them done, because some of them are redirected to a different type, a different audience, we will put some of those links on the website so you would be able to share that out to members of your organization too.
Okay, anyone else want to respond on this survey? Get your answers in, please.
So what I would do is, Hillary, if we've got a bunch of yeses on that, and we, if anyone who wants to see that presentation can email me or Hillary at the city, just tell us you want your organization on that calendar and we'll follow up if we've missed you or you haven't been contacted by us yet. We think that because our communities are so intertwined here, within a month or two, people will have seen it in one place or another and it'll be online. So we're just trying to make sure that everyone knows that they are invited. And Hillary's posted my Gmail account for scheduling that. If you want to do that, please just drop me a line there. Okay, so we're still moving forward with that communication piece. Really appreciate the work Taryn's doing on that. It's really going to help us keep things organized and keep the community involved. So I'll move down now to the toolkit expansions. Just to brief you all again, the toolkit is kind of the buzzword that we've been calling all of these solutions that we're putting forward for housing and growth issues, and how we're solving some of those. So under the toolkit, there's been a couple of new things that I wanted to share with you. The work group hasn't gone through these yet, but I will say that a number of folks, I know, I think Mark Tucker and possibly James attended the We Can, which is any one of you who remember what that acronym stands for, but it's a regional housing issues organization, 3 states, and went through a bunch of housing solutions, and were able to share some toolkit items and things that are being done regionally with them. Another thing that came out of that and other sources is something that I wanted to share with you today, because it came to me from literally 5 different unrelated folks. And that was on a national, establishing a home sharing network. So what that does is there is a national organization called National Shared Housing Resource Center, and they put out through an organization locally a template, basically guideline on how you can establish a home sharing network. I'm throwing this out to the entire group. The working group hasn't vetted through this yet, but since it's national and the site is out there, there have been a lot of other nonprofits who have said, how can we help? What is it that we can do? And a nonprofit picking up the ability to discuss establishing a home sharing network is something that I want to throw out to this advisory group for consideration. A home sharing network basically is a nonprofit that puts together predominantly, in my quick oversight of it, and James or Mark or Len, if any of you wanted to chime in on this, because I know that you had heard about it before, it's pairing up usually seniors with people who need housing, and the folks who are maybe empty nesters that have a larger, oh, thank you, Mark, the Western Community Network, he put that in the chat, that's what it's called. And we'll put that on the website, Taryn, on one of our resource pages. But basically this home sharing network pairs up folks who need housing and folks who have space in their home. So it's one that we'll be vetting through, but I'm putting it out there in case any of the advisory group members know of somebody who would be interested in talking with us about maybe being the champion of that type, exploring that type of an operation regionally. Reach out to me and we will bring you into the working group meeting where we can all talk about how that might work in our communities. That's just another, go ahead.
Sorry, can I add a quick note about that whole idea of a home sharing program?
Okay, please.
Primarily what the service providers were doing in that space were providing like background check, other functionality, so that somebody who say is an empty nester but has extra rooms in their house could find somebody to rent it, but also rely on the fact that this would be a safe, kind of trustworthy person that they bring into their home. So the primary functionality of that was to kind of make a more robust roommate search. But I mean, the idea is to get people that match well with each other in terms of interest and life circumstance.
Great. Thank you, James. I appreciate that. And as I said, there's been quite a few different organizations who've said, how can we help? And this is one where we have the opportunity to take a look at it, a way to build up that through an existing nonprofit. Okay, one of the other things that we had talked about is this came up in the work group, and I will share with you that we are going to be expanding some of the FAQs with a little more legalese and detail on this voluntary deed restriction programs, some of the things that Maggie was talking about. And what we will be doing is expanding it and hopefully putting it in more layman's terms so that you as advisory group members can share with your organizations what these things mean. Are they legal? How can they work? Where else are they being done? And we have more of an expanded view on that. If you have questions about some of these things that we're talking about, please email, because as we're vetting out the summary that we're putting in here, we want to make sure we've answered them. I will share with you, I've received 2 emails that were very well thought out and very well written. I'm positive they were done by an English teacher because there was nothing incorrect in any of the sentences. But they said that our FAQs are a little too legalese and they need to be written in a little bit simpler of terms. So I truly appreciated feedback like that. And I will work with Taryn to try to undo some acronyms and make things a little more straightforward, because it's very important that our whole community understands where we're going with this and what's happening. With that, okay, we had another, speaking about that, adding a couple of more of our toolkit items is top of the agenda for the work group coming up. So you will see some of those things on the website as they come out. So please share that. And also we have another polling question before we leave here today so that we can get some direction from the advisory group. I think.
We do. Kiki, did you want to do, there was also the one on the outreach and education, and then the last one was on the ARPA funds. Which one would you like? You want to do the outreach education one first? The video segments and the social media, Facebook?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go ahead and launch that one first, and then we'll have the one last poll after that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, so this one is launched.
I can't answer, but I'll say yes and yes.
Are you influencing decisions?
But if I could answer, this is what I would.
Exactly. All right, just waiting for a few more responses. All right, if you haven't responded and want to, please put in your response. Okay. Share the results. So this one. So it looks like people would like to see some little short videos that provide a little more information. And then it's kind of split on the, is the social media and the new Facebook presence helpful and sufficient? So it sounds like maybe we do need to do a little bit more. And I think, as Kiki and Taryn mentioned, the more that each of us can do to also share the website and the social media and Instagram, invite people to like those and join those, probably helps get the word out.
Kiki, I have a question.
Okay.
With regard to outreach, and I know I'm preaching to the choir if I'm talking to you and Carrie, we have a lot of people who show up late in the game and say they never understood or never heard about or never were told. Have you reached out, or are we considering reaching out to the opposition folks, to the Republican Central Committee, Kootenai County Republican Central Committee, to some of those other people, and offering them this opportunity to hear about this, so that at the 11th hour, when you've got a elected official considering something that we're proposing, you don't have the overwhelming group of naysayers who say, you never told me anything.
Well, I'll tell you 2 things, Len. One is I don't think that there's an opposition or a group here. This is our community, our region, and all of this affects all of us. And I will tell you that there are many groups who have been invited here. And yes, indeed, the Central Committee, the GOP groups, the St. Vincent de Paul Board, the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, the Northwest Property Owners Association, Community Action Partnership, the school boards have all been on the list to ask if they want to see this presentation and have an opportunity to ask questions. So I appreciate you bringing that up. We're all in this together, and I want everyone to have the opportunity to see the same presentations and ask the same questions. And anyone who knows someone who wants to, again, have us go to them, I will be happy to present to anyone.
Sure, and I appreciate your answer. I'm just talking about the people who comment the last minute and oppose taking federal funds, oppose growth, oppose housing, oppose using their tax dollars for anything but giving it back to them. Those are the people I'm talking to.
Well, I hope to reach out to them and keep as much education and information and transparency so that if they want information and they want to see what we're doing, it's right here, it's being recorded, it's being posted, and I'd be happy to show up at any of the meetings that I'm invited to. But thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have one more polling question, I believe.
Yes. Okay, it's on your screens, hopefully.
And what I think is interesting about the question is the question itself. We used an acronym instead of explaining what we're talking about. And then we are asking people if they have enough information about what we're talking about. So this is the American Recovery Plan Act funding, which is the dollars we've been talking about that's coming back through the states and can come back through the local municipalities in the form of grants and multiple different community projects. So what we wanted to hear from your organization is, do you have enough information about it? And let us know. One of the primary reasons for that is that some of these funds can be used for housing issues and growth issues that we've been talking about. So we want to make sure that when we start asking you questions about that sort of thing, you have enough information about it. If you feel your organization has enough information about it.
Okay, we have a few more responses coming in.
And that was that was apparent to me as I was sharing emails that I should stop using acronyms. And then I asked a question about something and used an acronym. So
Okay, anyone else want to
learning.
Weigh in on this poll before we close it? Please submit your answer now. Okay, we're going to end that one and share the results. So looks like it's kind of split. I think a good number say yes, but looks like maybe we need to do a little bit more with our FAQs. I think that was kind of the thought, is we can provide more background and information. And there's been a lot of research done by the different communities on what are the ARPA funds and are there strings attached and how can they be used. So I think the working group can work with Taryn on that.
Great. And we will, that's obviously the goal for these polls, is we need to get a bead on these people who represent the good cross section of our community on what information they need from us. So we will work on the FAQs on some of those owner restricted projects we've been talking about in the land acquisition area, and also on what these plan funds are, where they come from, and we'll try to do a collective. There's a lot of information out there on this, I know already, so we'll try to collect some of that stuff. And Carrie had a question.
Well, I didn't have a question. I was just going to say, I'm not sure the date, but the city of Post Falls is planning a workshop on the ARPA funds, so in March. So
great.
The general public is invited to that. It's primarily a workshop to inform and educate the city council and those of us decision makers, but the general public is invited. And there are a lot of questions that people have, because people generally don't read more than the first 3 sentences of any news story. So yeah, there will be an opportunity. And when we have a specific time and date, I'll share that with you.
Thank you. And I'll share that the city of Coeur d'Alene already had a workshop and they're planning another. And I think there's been discussions coming up at the county level too. So that's all going on right now. But that gives us a good piece of information about what our advisory group members think. We are going to wrap this up. We're at the end of our agenda. We're at our under 1 hour mark, which is what we always try to hit. There's going to be a lot coming up on the work group agenda, and some of the work group members are going to stay after this meeting to answer a couple questions for some time dated information, and we will share that as soon as we make some activity moving forward towards that. Our next meeting for this advisory group is March 28th at 3 p.m. and you'll get a Zoom link. If I can do anything, answer any questions, feel free to forward me an email, and do share the information with your respective organizations. That's what we're counting on you for. And we really appreciate you taking the time today to be here. So thank you, and we will see you next time.